Good afternoon. It's 5:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, and I'm sitting in this beautiful and secretive hidden room inside the London Coliseum. I've got a performance of the Rheingold in a couple of hours, and I have to go up for a warm-up quite soon. But I want to share with you, as a continuation from yesterday's looking at the idea of radical reinvention and how Egon Schiele portrayed himself in a various number of different ways throughout his career, I want to share with you three accounts from three different people that give us just another glimpse at the physical appearance of Egon Schiele and how others perceived his personality and character, because I think that's a very insightful piece of information to look at. So the first account of this Bürgerschreck, which is the German word for shocker of the bourgeois, is from a woman called Friederike Maria Beer, who I did show a painting of yesterday, the one that Gustav Klimt and Schiele both painted individually. And in this description, she states that Schiele is tall, thin, shy, and quiet. He spoke with the Viennese intonation, but not in heavy dialect. He dressed normally, but even so he stood out in a crowd. One could tell that there was something about him. That fantastic head of hair, those outspread ears. He really appeared rather spectacular. So that's account number one from Friederike Maria Beer. Then we have Mr. Arthur Rosler, who was the art critic for the socialist newspaper Arbeiter Zeitung, and he was quite an instrumental patron for Schiele. He would give Schiele good reviews and publicity, which were of inestimable value for the young artist. And this first impression of Egon Schiele has been preserved, and I shall read it to you now. The impression that I received of Schiele's personality at our first meeting was singular and powerful. It was the impression of having before me a personality extraordinary in its entire character. A personality of such markedly pronounced unusualness that its mere presence might not always be pleasing to everyone, and often not even to itself. Even within a group of well-known men with imposing countenances, Schiele's uncommon appearance stood out, and I was able to observe later on many occasions. He had a tall, slender, supple figure, with narrow shoulders, long arms, and long-fingered, bony hands. His face was beardless and sunburned, although I prefer to say tanned, and framed by long strands of unruly dark hair. His broad, angular forehead was furrowed by horizontal lines. The mobile features of his face were usually fixed in an earnest, almost sad expression, as though he was suffering from an inner weeping grief. When spoken to, he turned large, dark, astonished eyes, which first had to chase away the dream that possessed them, upon his interlocutor. His relaxed behaviour, never violent with rudeness or impetuous with passionate excitement, the undeniable peculiarity of even the smallest and least expressive of his slow gestures, and his laconic, aphoristic manner of speaking created, in harmonic accordance with his outward appearances, the impression of an inner nobility that was felt even more convincingly, since it was obviously natural and in no way intentional. I mean, what a description. My gosh, if anyone describes me like that after all is said and done, I'll be happy. Inner nobility. Gosh. The third and final account of Schiele's appearance and personality that I want to give you is from Central Inspector Heinrich Benisch, another one of Schiele's patrons. Mr. Benisch was an older man who only made a modest living from his position as a railroad inspector in Vienna, but his enthusiasm for art and art collecting was to inspire his own son, Otto Benisch, to become an art historian and of great breadth and international distinction. And Heinrich Benisch's first impression of Schiller, whom he had met in 1910, is something I'm going to read now too. I found a thin young man of more than average height and with an erect, unaffected posture. A pale but not sickly small face, great dark eyes and luxuriant dark brown hair which stood up from his head in uncontrolled long strands. His manner was a little shy, a little timid, and a little self-conscious. He did not speak much, but when one spoke to him, the face was illuminated by the glimmer of a quiet smile. The basic feature of his personality was seriousness of a man absorbed by a spiritual mission. Schiller's nature was childlike, but not childish. So there we go, 3 accounts from 3 different people that give us some glimpse into Schiller. And I want to share with you, just as a final thing, an image that you may have already seen, but it's Schiller lying on his deathbed in 1918. And for someone that cast himself, like I said yesterday, in such an array of different personas and characters, the fighter, the self-seer, the saint, the poet, the dandy, the model, you name it. He really does experience and experiment with how he portrays himself. It's quite something that this image of him on his deathbed shows a man in the best way possible who looks extremely, extremely plain, I think. There's nothing, if you were just to take in his image and know nothing more about who he was, I wouldn't necessarily think that he would be this kind of mercurial man of action that he was. Granted, he's on his deathbed, and I'm not saying he should be dressed to the nines or anything, but it just is a point that, for someone that constantly reinvented himself and his identity and his image throughout his life, it's almost like his whole life was a kind of performance in a way. And here you see him leaving the stage, so to speak. And it's just a thought that I might, think about a little bit more and plunge into another way. Anyway, I must go now. Wishing you a wonderful day and a great rest of the week. And I shall see you again on the flower path tomorrow.